Hello and welcome to my video. This is not a very long video. It's 23 minutes, maybe 24 minutes, and it's just a sketch really. I'm teaching a lot at the moment, so I tend to start my teaching sessions with oil sketches, and this is one of them. And you'll see my student Mikal, delightful lady from Israel, who appears briefly. So here I was thinking maybe I would have a mountain on the left, and I should add that these sketches are all from my imagination. Anyway, I thought this would make a nice mountain over here, but as often happens when I start doing this sort of thing, I change my mind. It's all about changing your mind and recovering from that. Some people might start a painting and change their mind and feel that it's completely ruined. But if you keep the paint flexible and relax, basically, you'll find that things will eventually come together. You may have noticed at the beginning I had this paint on a plastic plate and I was dripping it from the brush. That's the sort of consistency that I like the paint to be. Just think maple syrup and you can't go wrong. So this is only two colours. This is sap green and red ochre. I didn't use any other colours except right at the end when I put a tiny bit of light green on the trees, just for a few highlights. So very minimal palette. And as normally, you can see I am being incredibly precise. I think people must be getting sick of that silly joke. I'm not being precise. I'm completely relaxed and just chucking the paint on and just seeing what comes out of the paint. Now, I did get a comment from someone who said that they didn't consider this to be art because I was just sort of making a mess and seeing what appeared. Now that's a perfectly acceptable way to paint. I'm sure lots of people do this, and in fact, if you do it enough, you'll find that some of the paintings that you produce using this method look incredibly contrived and planned. It depends how you handle the paint. I mean, sure, you can just chuck the paint on and hope for the best, but then there has to come a point in the painting when you realise where it's going and what you can do with it. That's where I suppose the artistic side sort of clicks in. So as it's just a sketch, and I'm not going to use blue on the sky really, I'm just using the same colour but toned down. So here I do my usual thing with paper towel, kitchen towel, and just sort of smear it over the sky just to give a tone that looks skyish, I suppose. So there's several ways to use paper towel. There's what I call the sort of mushroom shape, and that's where you make the paper into like if you imagine looking on the top of a mushroom, just a sort of white dome, and that's for smearing. If you use the opposite side for that, where you've pinched all the tissue together, that's for dabbing, and that's where you get interesting textures just from dabbing. And then there's what I'm doing here, where my fingernail is actually inside the bundle of paper, and I use that to push through the paint. But then there's the taper, where you just basically roll the paper between your fingers to get a long taper, and that's really good for grass, particularly foreground grass, where you sort of whip the painting, and you'll see that soon. Good effect, bearing in mind that this sketch, when it's dry, will be fixed. It'll be like this is your alternative drawing. It's drawn in paint, obviously, and you leave it for a few days or however long you want, and it's fixed. So if you want to paint over the top, you can do that, And it won't matter if you make a mistake, you just wipe back and you'll come back to this. So nothing is ever lost. Am I about to start whipping? No, I'm not. I'm wiping away now. I'm making highlights. Bit of texture at the bottom of the tree, just to sort of indicate a bit of shrubbery. If you look at this video, you obviously realise it's not very long. You could be sitting out somewhere. You could do this from life. You don't have to do it from memory or imagination. You could actually go out quite easily just with two colours. In fact, you could mix these colours in a little container before you go, and you'll have them ready, so that you don't need to worry about a palette. Once this colour's mixed, you don't need a palette. You could just be dipping the brush straight into a pot of this colour already mixed. And the thing that is producing all these different tones on the painting that you can see is not whether there's more green or more red in the paint. It's down to how much I wipe the paint. That's how I get my tone. If I had used this board or canvas, you can do it on canvas, of course. If I had already put a stain on this canvas, I wouldn't be able to wipe back properly to get my highlights, unless I decided that my highlights were going to be yellow or red or whatever. But I prefer white, the white of the gesso coming through to actually show my highlights. And it's all done pretty well with one brush too, when I use a brush. It's not a little delicate brush by any means, as you can see. It's just this one actually isn't a decorating brush. This is from an art store when I get out of the way. And it's just flat. I like flat brushes because there's so many different ways to use them. You can use the corners, the edge or the side, and it depends how you change your pressure on the picture as to what result you get. If you use it on the side, you will get you will push paint away, or if you use it on its side and push down as I'm doing here, you apply paint. If I dig the brush into the paint and move left or right, up, down, whichever way, it'll take the paint off and you'll get a change in tone. And of course, for the foliage on the trees where at the edge of the tree, I just use the corner of the brush. So I've stopped the abstract phase of this painting by tightening up. I consider the beginning to be the abstract. That's just sorting out large areas of colour and tone. So that's over with now. Now I'm into a little bit more detail, although I always hesitate to use the word detail because it isn't. It's just an illusion. Now this is something you can do that's actually quite effective. As you can see, I've made the paper into a sort of taper, and then just pushing up and down, you can actually get the impression of a tree quite quickly. On the subject of trees, almost everyone that I teach here, I'll tell you about the teaching later, but everyone who comes here, they have this idea that a tree is a sort of set shape, and it tends to be very wide at the bottom, going thin way too quickly. Trees don't do that. Trees are pretty well almost the same thickness for at least 2/3 of the way up the tree, depending on the species of tree. But they just don't get too thin too quick. So this method of pushing, that's probably what I'm explaining there to my student, of pushing this taper up through the colour of the tree, the dark shadows, like so, you just get a nice line that meanders upwards just at the right thickness. And once I put them on, you'll see what I do in a minute. Obviously, if you're looking at a tree like that, all the trunk and the branches aren't going to be right in your face and the foliage behind, so you have to pull some of the foliage back over to the front. So I just do a few dabs over certain parts of the tree trunk, and that puts the foliage in front of the tree. And again over here. and later I add a few white highlights to the tree trunks right at the end. I've got a feeling that I didn't video me actually doing that. I can't remember now, but you'll see. If you're still here at the end, of course. On the subject of teaching, for those who are interested, I do a 5-day course in France. And this year I'm completely booked for 2019. Next year there are people showing interest, I think 5 or 6 people at the moment, which is pretty early on considering it's only June. But I will also be doing, apart from my 5-day intensive course, I will be doing some venues, and I'm pretty sure that I've found the perfect venue, which is not far from where I live, and it will probably accommodate, I would think, 10 to 12 people, and I'm having discussions with the owner of this extremely nice, well, I can only say magnificent house, about the costs, because they would provide food and board, and I would provide the teaching. And I'm working on the idea that I would start the day doing a demo like this, which I can probably do. Well, this size I know I can do in under half an hour. That's not a problem. But I'm thinking of doing something maybe 4 times the size. Now this is 60 centimetres deep by 80 centimetres wide. I'm not sure what that is in inches, but I'll put it on the screen. But I think so that everybody can see what I'm doing, I would definitely choose a bigger size and paint with a much bigger brush. So I could do that for people to watch at the beginning, and then I would talk through exactly what I'm doing, and then it would be down to the students to do what they like. Either they can paint what I've painted or something similar, or they can do their own composition, and then I would go round and help out and answer questions. That's the plan anyway, but that would be for next year. And if you go to my Facebook page, I'll be doing updates on that and letting you know about how it's going. If you decide you'd like to do that, you can contact me on Facebook. If you don't have a Facebook page, I will put my email address. Is that a good idea? I'm not sure whether one's supposed to give out email addresses, but you will have my website address below, and you can email me via that, so that may be the best thing to do. So you can just contact me, and I'll send you the details about what, when and where and how much. So back to the painting. When I paint trees, I like to get as much movement in them as I can. I can't stand static trees. Static landscape is fine, but I like moving skies and moving trees. And the reason, obviously, is because they do that. Trees wobble about. Sky is usually always on the move. So I like to get a bit of flow in my brushstroke. And this is what I'm explaining to my student here. You may notice I do the odd strange hand movement, but it's like that. That's me just saying, get some wiggle in your tree, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'll let you watch for a minute, and I'll come back in a second with anything I can think of. So yes, that's me. It looks like I'm conducting an orchestra sometimes, but I'm not. I'm just telling my student what I'm planning. Yes, we decided this painting. It's a collaboration really, because I was painting obviously in the style that I paint, and I was getting my student involved by asking her what shape tree would you like. So we decided on a slightly flat topped tree, which could be, I don't know, could be hawthorn, could be, who knows, could be the very, very rare Stuart Davies tree, who knows. Anyway, so I'm keeping the brushstrokes as lively as possible. And liveliness in a brushstroke is very important in a painting. If you paint a landscape and you make everything as perfect as you can get it, and you know, spend hours over it tickling away with a small brush, you'll end up with something that can look really quite stiff. If you use a nice bold brush and keep it fluid, work on one part of the painting for a while, and then as soon as you think you've pretty well achieved what you want, move to another part of the painting, and then go back to where you were. That keeps everything fresh, and it also gives you a few minutes to assess how it's going on that particular part of the painting. So that's oh yes, I'm going around the edge there. There are places on landscapes like this where you can add foliage to the sky above the tree without even a branch connecting them. The disappearing branch or twig is quite an interesting technique. If you place things in the right position, it will work. Obviously, you wouldn't put a clump of foliage floating 20 feet above the tree without a branch or a twig connecting it. But the odd, carefully placed small clump sort of speaks for itself. The brain fills in the missing twig, I guess. That's probably the best way. So, compositionally, this is quite a typical composition, really, I suppose. You'll notice that I've got a slope on the left-hand side coming down, pointing down to the part of the picture where I want the viewer to go. And then you've got the gap between the trees with, I don't know what that is in the distance, could be another clump of trees. You've got something there to sort of hold the viewer in slightly. And then you've got the tree on the right, which sort of, stops you scooting over to the right-hand side and disappearing out of the image. Composition is an interesting thing. They say, whoever they are, they say the focal point should never be bang in the middle. I totally disagree with that. It can work if you're careful. What I wouldn't do in a painting is put a completely symmetrical object in the middle. Organic shapes, yes, and use light to keep the attention in there. A light spot quite often works, but yeah, I suppose everyone has different views. Okay, so this is the fun part. What I did, I put quite a lot of heavy colour, slightly less oil, in the foreground tones, and I've made the tissue paper, well, I call it kitchen towel. It's not really tissue paper; it's kitchen towel, into like a taper, and then start whipping it, and that's how you get grass. So the grass that you whip onto the picture, and you really need to really hit it quite hard to get through the paint sometimes, will produce a nice light, thin sort of strand of grass or foliage, and it'll be a lot thinner and a lot quicker than you can probably paint with a small brush. And the beauty of it is that when this is dry, you could then go over your grass and pick out the bits that you like, the little highlights. Just put a little bit of green on it, a bit of white, a bit of yellow, a bit of whatever colour you want, and it just saves so much time. Particularly if you're as you know, this is a sketch. If you're out sketching and you're not going to do a great grand masterpiece, that's a really good, quick way to get the impression over that you want to get. It's quite hard looking at this to realise that all the greens you see in it are all the same colour. It's quite an amazing variation that you get. Okay, a close-up of a bit of whipping. You need to do this as soon as possible in this sort of painting. If the oil is too drippy and you do the whipping thing and you get your grass strands looking nice, as soon as you can, lay the picture down flat, because otherwise drips will appear and take over, and you can actually lose the entire painting if it's too drippy. Now we're coming to the end. This is the only other colour I used. A little bit of white, just to pick out a few highlights on the tree. And there we are. We're almost at the end. So just a reminder: if you've liked this, please subscribe. It's always nice to read your comments. Be polite. If you're not, I'll delete you. And yeah, what else do I need to say? Yeah, subscribe. Hit the bell button next to the subscribe button. Then you'll know when I upload a video. And I'll try and upload more. I tend to go there's quite a lot, often a long period between my uploads, but it's to do with how much I'm teaching. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. So if you have any questions, ask. If I don't get back to you straight away, don't worry, I'll get back to you eventually. I read all comments, and I respond to every comment. So even if I just put a heart on it, you'll know that I've read it and listened. And I'll see you in the next video. Just let you watch this for now, and I'll play a little bit of music in a second while I'm just sitting here deciding if there's anything that I've forgotten. Oh yes, yes, of course there is. I always forget something. You can see more of my stuff on Facebook. If you want to follow me there, please like my page. All the details will be below in the little box. And yeah, as a reminder, if you want me to teach you, you want to come to France, there's two separate ways. You either come for a 5-day intensive course, just me and you, or you come to one of my venues. And I'm hoping to have possibly 4 venues next year. Don't know yet. I'll let you know when I know. So thank you for watching, and have a nice day, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.